So Emily, what's on your radar?
Well, over the summer, we talked here about the tyranny of jargon, about the immediate real-world consequences of political correctness. Nobody loves the media as much as the media, so the cancel culture conversation tends to be absolutely dominated by high-profile cases of celebrities and journalists, many of whom are thoroughly unsympathetic characters. But cancel culture hurts people with less privilege much more, and much more than the media will acknowledge. I wanted to revisit this point today in light of two pieces of reporting that were published on Substack this week by Abigail Shrier and Matt Taibbi. Note the platform, by the way. This is no small point. Both Shrier and Taibbi have worked at mainstream outlets, and mainstream outlets should eagerly be doing the same reporting as them. But they're not, and that's why Shrier and Taibbi are self-publishing huge stories, huge pieces of journalism of national importance on Substack. So let's start with Shrier's report, which featured testimony from surgeon Dr. Marcy Bowers and child psychologist at the UCSF Gender Clinic, Erica Anderson. Shrier summarized the revelations in her story. For the first time in the U.S., top gender medical providers collectively acknowledged 4 facts, she wrote. Early puberty blockade can lead to significant surgical complication and also permanent sexual dysfunction. Peer and social media influence do seem to play a role in encouraging the current unprecedented spike in transgender identification by teen girls, and the World Professional Association of Transgender Health, of which both Bowers and Anderson are board members, has been excluding doctors who question current medical protocols to its detriment. So despite the smear campaigns from ideologues, Shrier is a careful and factual reporter whose work leans heavily on serious research. The 4 findings, she notes, are individually important, but one is absolutely crucial to the rest. Quote, the World Professional Association of Transgender Health has been excluding doctors who question current medical protocols. That's what Shrier reported. This recalls the last time I did a radar on the subject, which was inspired by reporting from Katie Herzog, also on Substack, that revealed a group of mostly progressive doctors was meeting secretly over Zoom, concerned about creeping illiberalism from PC dogma in the industry. Quote, whole areas of research are off limits because of that dogma, Herzog wrote. Now, in both cases, fear of repercussions is preventing doctors from providing patients with better care. So let's turn to Matt Taibbi. On his Substack, Matt reported on the curious arc of molnupiravir, which was treated very differently under Donald Trump than Joe Biden. In any other context, a drug like molnupiravir would have been much more likely to be evaluated on the merits, Taibbi wrote. But in the context of a spat between an Obama appointee and Trump officials in the run-up to a presidential election, the drug became, as an enormous number of other irrelevant things in the last 5 years have become, a stand-in for a larger culture war. Dr. Robert Kadlec, a former DHS official, told Taibbi, quote, it could have been out 6 months ago. It would have been a game changer. It would have saved tens of thousands of lives. So for more on that reporting, we'll have Matt on the show later to talk about it in depth on that article. My point now is this. As elites treat these questions like they're intellectual playthings, jockeying to see who can rack up the most virtue points on the video game that is Twitter, they're creating and maintaining an environment that is literally starting to cost lives. And the people who bear the brunt of those consequences are the people who already have fewer resources to deal with bad medical treatment and even less incentive to speak up in these debates because they don't have the luxury of jumping over to a Substack if they're a nurse or a postmate or a bartender. The result is an environment in which only one position on questions of enormous consequence is accepted in polite society. And the result of that is now a matter of life and death. It harms all of us, but good luck telling that to the elites who rack up likes and retweets and editorial affirmation in the short term. Ryan, I feel like sometimes these conversations have the dorm room quality in the media where people are just in a bull session talking about, the philosophical rights and wrongs of speech and expression. But actually what's happened is that snowballed to the point where this atmosphere is so chilled. Mm-hmm. Doctors are literally afraid to provide adequate treatment because they're scared of transgressing these very, very, very narrow and strict boundaries when it comes to what we can and cannot say. And it's not an abstract dorm room conversation. It's like it has real world consequences. Are we starting to see that in a very on a dangerous scale?
Yeah, I mean, so what do we know about why officials were slow walking this? Was it intended to hurt Trump?
I don't think it was intended to hurt Trump. I think it came from the position, and this is an important point to make, and Matt makes it in his post, that they're blinded by the bias. So if something, it's sort of like the way that people on the left talked about the vaccine under Trump versus the way they talk about it under Biden, and that, well, I don't trust anything coming out under Donald Trump. I wouldn't take that vaccine, to whatever Kamala Harris's now infamous quote is. So I think it was more that people were blinded by the bias, and that's why I think what Matt did was important, is to say, listen, this is a fairly clear-cut A and B type situation. Look at what happened. People didn't want to touch something like that.
Well, I joked when the news of this drug emerged, can somebody tell me what the political cultural correct answer is to whether or not this is okay to take?
Right.
Just tell me now, so I can save time of trying to figure out which camp I'm supposed to be in. And some people joked, well, it's by the same people who made ivermectin, so that means it's fine.
Yeah.
Other people said, it's not a shot, so it's fine. Other people said, well, it's big pharma, so therefore it's not. Other people said, well, if it means that you can not get the vaccine and just take this pill, then it's a Trump thing. And that's a joke. That was a joke, and everybody was joking. But those jokes, are likely to solidify into reality, very, very quickly, and people will genuinely sort along cultural lines around a kind of objective fact of an objective question. Is this an effective treatment? Is this not an effective treatment? Should it be utilized by medical professionals? And to think that cultural and political values are going to sort people on that answer is frightening.
Yeah, it's frightening, and it's also what is most terrifying is that when people have legitimate lines of inquiry about medical science, which is the most immediate way that we see life and death, I think very clearly, when people have legitimate lines of inquiry in that field, they don't feel comfortable pursuing them because they feel as though their job could be on the line, and people's jobs actually are on the line. And so one of the great responses to cancel culture, the left loves to say cancel culture is not real, it's blown out of proportion, it's only accountability culture, and it only affects people who are legitimate racists and bigots, which they of course think is everybody. But the point is that it's not just the people you see actually getting fired or actually suffering repercussions. It is the people who aren't speaking up. I mean, it's the conflicts that aren't happening that are some of the biggest casualties and biggest losses to our society. And you cannot have a good sort of like research community. You cannot have the best science in the world. You can't have good science if you don't have people able to speak sort of openly. And the great thing is that bigotry is stigmatized in this country, and it's not to say that we do not still have a problem with discrimination. Of course we do. Sadly, we probably always will, and we can do our best to make that problem smaller and smaller every single year, every single week, every single day. But that doesn't mean, people are not widely wielding medicine in deeply racist ways that harken back to Jim Crow. It's not on that scale right now. It's not to say that there aren't problems. There are. But that's not what is happening right now.
Yeah, and whenever you have something completely calamitous come out of a corporation or a government agency, people always say, wasn't there somebody in the room that saw what a bad idea this was, and why didn't somebody speak up about this? And people often say that's why you need diverse voices in the room. But you need them to be able to voice their concerns in a way that isn't going to end their career if the skepticism they raise or the questions they raise turn out not to be legitimate. Let's say you have, hey, why are we doing this? What about this? And somebody explains, no, well, this is why we're doing it. Like, oh, okay. Cool. Just wanted to run that trap. But people are too scared to run the traps because unless they're 100% certain that they're right and that they're going to prevail, it's safer for them to just say nothing.
Yeah, and again, we can have these dorm room conversations about how this phenomenon kills comedy and it kills, debate, all of those things.
Might also kill people.
It is literally killing people. And so it's sort of time for us to move past this conversation that we can sort of like have these debates about abstractions. Like, yeah, it's killing comedy, but it's also like literally killing people. And it's because the sort of blue checkmark world loves to debate these things because we exist on video game Twitter, where the incentives to have the abstract conversation are all there, and the incentives to sort of do the woke virtue signaling thing are all there. But what that does is create a climate that makes people more afraid to cross the lines that you are solidifying with this nonsense. And so I thought the Schreier post and the Taibbi post, which came within a day of each other, were sort of, it should be the type of thing that sends shockwaves through the country. But again, they posted it on Substack because New York Times wouldn't run that stuff.
Right. Happy to cross lots of lines around here, and we'll have Matt Taibbi later.
That's right.
And we'll have more Rising right after this.
Ryan, I am looking forward to what's on your radar.